So before I invite the speaker to the stage, just wanted to let you know this is an Accenture sponsored event, and I want to thank the folks from Accenture here for sponsoring our event and having such a strong partner to be a sponsor. So with that said, today we'll have two presentations. So the first one is with Bronwyn, from Managing Director of Fjord, talking about the 8 doors of transformation. So we'll run this little video, and then she's going to come up to do a presentation. So join the event and stick around for the session as well.
Here today to talk to you about digital transformation. So there's been a bit of a sort of an agenda switcheroo that happened quite recently. So I hope you're not here under false pretenses. We're going to have Michael talking to some colleagues and clients, but I'm going to be talking about why 70% of digital transformations fail. It's quite a staggering number, and a huge amount of money, energy, time, blood, sweat and tears is wasted by organisations as they try to do this thing called transformation. So I head up Fjord. Fjord is a part of Accenture Interactive, and our job is to create customer experiences that people love. And quite often we find that organisations are spending millions and millions of dollars on creating a beautiful brand promise, spending lots of money on adverts, but when it comes to the actual delivery of that brand experience, we are often let down. So our job at Fjord is to try and unify that customer experience with the brand promise. And so we spend a lot of time working with organisations to go on this thing called transformation. So who here works in corporate? Can you show of hands? Okay, so most of the room. What about agencies? Creative, okay. Anything else? We've got rugby, obviously, down here. I'm not sure if it's probably half of you here actually just to see rugby. But anyway, I'll try and entertain you in the interim. So we work with a lot of corporations to go on this thing called transformation. And I guess the question that I'm going to try and talk to you and answer today is, why is this such a big thing at the moment? Why are organisations trying to transform? What's going on? And how do you do it successfully? So what is going on? So first of all, we have an accelerating pace of change. So the pace of change will never be as slow as it is today. The other thing that's going on is that we can now make absolutely anything that we can imagine. So if you don't believe me, have a listen to this. So Star Wars, we probably all grew up watching Star Wars. In fact, we all still watch it today and love it. And it was full of robots and things flying around. Well, today we have drones that can deliver things to your house, that can deliver blood to you if you live in Kenya. And we also have robots. So this guy's name is Baxter, and he's very likely to be a colleague of yours, working to do things very effectively and efficiently that traditionally humans have done in probably not very nice conditions. So we have drones and we have robots. Who here remembers Knight Rider? You probably have to be sort of my age or a bit older. Yes, quite a few of you. So this TV program had a guy called the Hoff, who used to be able to call up his car called Kit on his phone, and it would come and save him. So of course we now have autonomous vehicles, and we also have smartwatches, and you can call your car on this smartwatch and it will come and save you too. Who's seen the movie Her? This is one of my favourite movies, much more recent than Knight Rider. And if you remember, this is about a guy who falls in love with his operating system. So it's a little earpiece here, and the voice is Scarlett Johansson. And she just completely understands him. She's his personal assistant to all aspects of his life, and she completely wins over his heart. So today we have these things in our homes called smart speakers. This one's Alexa, and I know a guy in America who is definitely in love with Alexa in his home. But all of the big digital giants in the West Coast have these new digital assistants that are here to make our lives easier. They're here to serve us, to organise our lives, to take things off the thinking list. This one is Facebook's M. You also have Cortina, you have Siri, and you have Google at home. So I suppose the question is, which one are you going to fall in love with? And then we have the original supervillain. So this is guys called Dr. No, and he's the original supervillain from the James Bond series. Well, I think today we have our very own supervillain, this guy. And I think the likeness is just uncanny. He is equally elusive. He has an accent. He's got tons of money. He does electric cars. He sends things up into space. He's even going to connect our minds to an artificial intelligence via a Neuralink, and he wants to live on Mars. So I think truth is stranger than fiction sometimes. So the future is here. Science fiction is here today, and technology is changing incredibly rapidly, and that's where disruption comes in. So when you have this incredible rate of human innovation hitting existing business models, we see disruption. So we have technology getting faster and faster. So we have waves of new technology coming. They're hitting our markets, and they're coming in faster and faster waves. And what's happening is when companies can combine all of these innovations, anything is possible. You also have massive reduction in cost. So what we call algorithmic cost reduction. So the reduction in cost is getting faster and faster. So you have new entrants coming into the market with startups, able to take advantage of this technology at very, very low cost and combining it in ways which are highly disruptive with new business models. And so industries are being disrupted. And we all know about the kind of sort of big stories around disruption. You have Kodak, you have Blockbuster, you have, and this one here, Encyclopedia Britannica. You know, these big bang disruptions which hit the press. And what's interesting about those is quite often the people that were running those businesses, they knew about this disruption that was coming their way. You know, Netflix begged Blockbuster to invest in them many times, and Blockbuster said no. Nokia had all the patents on smartphones, and yet didn't jump on the bandwagon, and Apple took over. So quite often these companies kind of sleepwalk into being disrupted. But actually what is more insidious and more common is compressive disruption. And this is disruption that happens when a new entrant or new technology slowly erodes the profits that an organisation can make, the profits that they need to reinvest in new products and services to take advantage of these new technologies. And that you see much more often, and that's actually the cause of significant corporate demise. So what we're seeing is that companies are dying faster and faster. So back in 1958, the average lifespan of a business on the S&P index, S&P 500 index, was 61 years. It's now around 15 years. So that's quite shocking and quite scary for execs and boards. And what we're hearing is that companies that are digitally mature are able to make a lot more money, they're able to make a lot more profit, a lot more growth, and be a lot more resilient. And so what you're seeing is all of these organisations saying, okay, we need to do this thing called digital transformation, and it's going to save us. It's going to save us from corporate demise. But 70% of these transformations fail. And that's due to a number of things. It's the complexity of transformation. We're talking about generally, especially here in Australia, tier 1 organisations that are legacy companies. They're 20th century companies. They have huge workforces that all need to change and shift. They've got legacy IT. They've got mindsets that sort of belong in an industrial age. They are slow to commercialise ideas. They don't know where to start and where to invest. But also, what we're seeing is that whilst technology is changing fast, people do not. And I think this is one of the biggest causes of failure to transform. Current approaches to transformation that we see don't accommodate the needs of people. And when I mean people, I mean customers, really actually understanding what your customers need, who they are, understanding their context. But just as importantly, the people inside your organisation. You need to bring your people on this journey. You need to inspire them. You need to communicate with them, and you need to enable them. So, to unlock the power of transformation, we believe that organisations need to rewire themselves completely, but with humans at the heart. So what does that mean? When you're thinking about transforming an organisation to become a sort of a digital-led 21st organisation, you need a whole bunch of new skills. You need people with different mindsets, different skills. You need, as you would have heard yesterday if you're in the sort of keynotes in the morning, you need people who understand experience. You need the world's best designers. You need the world's best technologists. You need data and analytics. You need all of these capabilities to come together in real time around a customer to give them hyper-personalised experiences that are kind of predictive and proactive. So in order to attract that talent, you need to have a really amazing employee experience to be able to attract them and to be able to keep them. I'm sure everybody in this room gets hit up by LinkedIn every day with new job offers. And so that ability to kind of retain that talent that you need to disrupt and to transform is essential. You also need human-centric operating models and strategies and a culture that encourages and empowers innovation at every level. So it's not just about an innovation department over here. We need to find ways to give everybody a voice. Anyone in the business who has a good idea. You need to be able to set a vision and a purpose and then let those people use their instincts to get you there. So to unlock the power of transformation, organisations need to become what we call a living business. So what is a living business? Well, at its heart, it is a business that is really vital. And what we mean by that is has an incredible ability to shift and change as the market changes around them. So that means shaping an organisation around your people, giving them the right tools, removing all the friction and the barriers that prevent people from being able to move forward at pace. And it means really having a level of agility that most current organisations just do not have. So, a living business has 4 vital signs, and they're almost like human traits, human characteristics. So the first one is personality. So when I think about personality, I think about the business's core purpose and how much that translates down into the everyday actions and behaviours of employees. So is that really well understood, and does it actually help people to make decisions? Does it come through in comms and marketing? Does it come through in values and behaviours? So how can you find your organisation's core purpose and hold a megaphone to it so that everybody can understand it and rally behind it? Next is craft, which is essentially what your business does. And it's the skills that people bring. How well do they bring the right skills every day to their business, to their work, and do the very best work so that they can create experiences that customers really love. Next is instinct. And this one is actually where we find most organisations really struggle. So instinct is, how does your business make decisions? And what we find is that organisations put up so many barriers to make it very difficult to make quick decisions. So the inability to work across silos or hierarchies or approval processes or a whole bunch of bureaucracy, which actually kills that natural instinct that people have where they want to do the right thing, but the business just makes it really slow and laborious to do that. And then relationships. So this is the strength of the relationships
throughout your ecosystem. So how much do people connect? How well do you allow information to flow? How much do people collaborate? And that's not just within your organisation, but also with your partners and contractors and anybody else within an organisation. So why does this matter? Well, what we've found is we've done some research. We can use these vital signs as a diagnostic. So we do staff surveys across an organisation and surveys with executives. And what we find is that companies sit across a spectrum on these 4 vital statistics. And companies that score highly on vitality actually perform better in terms of revenue, and they're also more resilient and can kind of come to terms with and survive these disruptions. So how do you become a living business? Well, we have found through our work with organisations that are going through this thing called transformation, a number of patterns have emerged of people that are doing it well, where it's been successful. So first of all, they put people first and they put design at the heart. And then they start to do many of these 8 things. So I'm going to talk you through these 8 doors. So first of all, you need to spark the change. So you need to have an intervention that is actually going to create the burning platform that's going to rally the whole organisation around the need to change. So this can sometimes be a few things. It can be a new CEO starting within an organisation, or it can be a CEO making a very public and grand gesture. So ANZ, for example, last year the CEO, Shane Elliott, came out and he told everybody, all the press, that they were going on this transformation, and they committed to it in a very public way. So that's another galvanising force. Quite often we see and we facilitate boards and exec teams going on these things called digital safaris, where they go to Silicon Valley. This is a map of Silicon Valley. And we take them to all of the startups and the big digital organisations out there, and we show them what's happening. And that creates this kind of sense of, oh my God, we have to jump on this quickly. We're way behind. And sometimes it's just picking a single metric and saying, all right, we're going to improve our net promoter score by this amount. So whatever it is, you need to create that spark for change that everybody's going to get behind. Secondly, we see this tactic being very successful, splitting the transformation. So we call it the brilliant basics and cutting new ground. And the reason why it's important to split the transformation is that actually these 2 tracks require very different things. They require very different skill sets. They require different mindsets, they require different timeframes, they require different governance, they require different funding models, and they actually require different staff. So you have in the brilliant basics a whole bunch of infrastructural stuff, enablers, core enablers that just get you up to kind of, the entry level of what all of your competitors are doing. The stuff that's just mandatory table stake stuff. Sometimes takes a bit longer, might be a little bit more waterfall in some stages. But then with the creating new opportunities, this cutting new ground, that's where you need sort of the digital innovation team. And that's sort of sprinting. It's coming up with kind of brand new business models, brand new products and services. And it's a very different type of mindset, and it's a very different type of funding and governance model. You need to reflect from a people perspective. So if you sit in your glass ivory tower and decide what your customers need or what your people need without going out and talking to them, without actually going and seeing their context, understanding their needs, you're likely to fail. Because you're going to be doing that based on a whole bunch of assumptions, a whole bunch of sort of old data, probably a little bit of who speaks loudest or who has the most authority. So it's this inside-out view of the world. You need to go and do an outside-in view of the world. And those emotional, qualitative insights is actually also what can create the kind of the desire to create change within your employees when they see their customers' real pains and aspirations. So you need to blend this qualitative with this quantitative data so that you're moving from a place of rich insight and not just guessing. Then you need to illustrate the vision. And this one is actually something that we were surprised about, but we've seen work time and time again. So we are doing a massive transformation for an organisation in the UK. And the illustration that you see at the top there is actually a big poster. It's about this big. And it's the core customer journey and the stages that they go through when they do a DIY project at home, putting in a new kitchen, for example. And what we found is we created this artifact, which illustrated the core customer journey and the new products and services and the enablers that kind of sat beneath that as one of our artifacts that we do. But what we've seen is it's become the brand of the transformation. Everybody refers to it as the fern. And you see people going into meetings and they put this blueprint down on the table and they're like, well, if it's not on the fern, we're not doing it. It's become this shorthand that explains the intent. It explains sort of what we are doing and what we aren't doing, and it kind of gets everybody behind this vision and purpose. So think about how you can illustrate the vision so that everybody can understand what's going on and very quickly kind of be able to talk about it. Then you need to sprint at digital pace. So it's very important especially with that second stream, which is the cutting new ground, that second track. You need to be able to incubate new ways of working. Quite often we see organisations setting up a whole new space, like a third space, where you put in, external vendors, you put in partners, you put in staff, all those experts and newcomers coming together, and you set up a different environment for them, where they have permission to do things differently. They can put stuff on all the walls, they can wear whatever they want, they can have loud music playing. You're just trying to kind of create something that's different from the rest of the culture. And their job is to move really fast, give them really quick deadlines. They need to have hypotheses based on that insight, and they need to prove and disprove them quickly. And it's all about speed to impact. So how can you get things built and in front of customers as quickly as possible so that you can get their feedback and you can iterate and you can get things live? And then you need to partner with open arms. So there is no need to ever start from scratch. You have incredible partners like Adobe and many others that can come together into a consortium that can help you leverage their technology and just take a massive head start. So you need to partner to fuel your transformation. The old way of doing everything bespoke and in-house, I think, doesn't exist. You need to invite these amazing partners into your transformation and leverage the speed that you can have by using their technologies. And you need to nurture an engaged culture. So what we see is that when you create these sort of spaces where teams can go and sprint at digital space, a whole new kind of culture comes from the bottom up. We've seen teams start to, especially when you have sort of chapters and squads and tribes, people in Agile, they start to brand themselves. They start to give themselves team names. They start to walk around in T-shirts with their own brands in them. They personalise their space. There starts to get this amazing camaraderie and this kind of muscle memory. And you start to see a kind of competitiveness between all of these different tribes and chapters who are all each taking an idea and running with it. And that's what you want. You want that momentum. You want that excitement. You want that pace. And you want everyone to be intrinsically motivated to get this stuff out to market. And then you need to infect the rest of the organisation. So it's all very well and good to kind of create this hub of people doing things differently, but that needs to scale. So we've been going through this ourselves at Accenture. So, Accenture bought Fjord. We're a design and innovation capability. We're 1,000 people. Accenture is about 400,000 people. But what we've done is we and other acquisitions have helped to show a new way of working. And we are now scaling. So we do design thinking, but there's 1,000 of us. Accenture is now rolling out design thinking to 40,000 people, design thinking training. They've also taken a methodology that is sort of the very best of sort of the latest and newest way of doing things, a design thinking and a data-led kind of methodology, and they've called it Form, and they're now rolling it out to everybody. So all 400,000 people are now using this as the way that they solve problems and take things to market. So that's how you start to infect the organisation. So those are the 8 doors. And the last thing I'll leave you with this is that it's rarely linear. So you might start with the spark and splitting the transformation and use the research and go through that way. But equally, you may do it completely the other way around, the wholesale rewire, which I think is a bit more like what ANZ are doing. They're just like, all right, we're going to just transform the whole organisation all at once, and we're going to go that way. Or you may do the infectious spiral, which is taking one part of your business that's perhaps a bit low risk and starting there, allowing them to sprint at digital place and then iterating it back up once you find a way that it works. Or you may do the serendipitous leap and sort of jump around and just try lots of different things. But whatever you do, we do believe that a human-centric problem-solving way of going around transformation is critical to the success and will set you apart so that you can thrive and not just survive. So if you want to become a living business and go through this digital transformation, I would suggest you start with doing an audit of your vital signs. Think about which transformation path you would like to take and open a door. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Bronwyn. So up next, I want to invite Nikita from Accenture and Kevin from Rugby Australia for a quick fireside chat about analytics and sports. So enjoy the show.
It all comes down to this: the training, discipline, teamwork, building supersets of data. Accenture is analyzing the numbers and giving players and coaches access to performance insights 24 hours a day. Rugby has always been a numbers game, but it has never seen numbers like this. Started with the Wallabies, but the story doesn't end there. Now we're helping build Australian rugby at all levels, on and off the field.
Thank you, everyone. So my name's Nikita. Atkins. I'm a data science and digital leader in Accenture, and I'm here today with Kevin to talk to you about the work Accenture is doing in partnership with Rugby Australia. This has been, we're using the Adobe Symposium because of the wonderful work we're doing across digital, but also this is the week leading into the Bledisloe Cup and the double header on Saturday, where we've got the Wallaroos playing New Zealand and the Wallabies in double header this Saturday night, so it's going to be terrific. With me is Kevin Stafford from Rugby. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Hi, guys. My name's Kevin Stafford. I'm Head of Technology at Rugby Australia. So I look after everything technology related, really. So from community all the way through to high performance, everything in between, including kind of our corporate side and everything else. So we work with a pretty good team over there. We're quite small and quite reactive, but you know that works really well for us when we are looking into moving into our next phase of digital transformation. And just touching on some of the stuff that Bronwyn talked on earlier, can just see where we are in that journey and you know how these guys have helped us get there. So yeah, really excited to be here today, and thanks for Accenture and you guys for turning up to listen to us.
Exactly. So thanks, Kev. Can you talk to me a little bit about the partnership that Rugby Australia and Accenture has had over the last 4 to 5 years?
Yeah, sure. So we started partnering in around 2012, just coming up to the Lions series, which you know that's probably the biggest thing that we'll see apart from a World Cup and hosting a World Cup, which we obviously did a few years prior to that. So it was a really great opportunity for us to start working in the digital space and really driving you know with fans to connect with them, which you know we'd probably been a little bit poor at that time. And you know we're still on a path of improvement now. So the first thing that we looked at was a mobile app around the Lions tour. So just stats and information, games, buying tickets, and things like that. That was probably the first big project, and then we did some cool streaming stuff to the troops for the Bledisloe Cup. So troops away in Afghanistan, they couldn't you know obviously watch the game, but you know really reaching out to those guys and showing them that we're there with them and giving some messages from the players and things like that as well. So that was a really good one, and then we really started our digital transformation there. So we picked up a new CRM, Salesforce, and started going through the process of really, you know, the first stages of the digital transformation, as Bronwyn touched on, was for us the infrastructure stuff, the stuff that people don't see. So the in-house architectural, moving our data centers into the cloud, changing the way we work, using software as a service as much as possible, rather than you know some of these old legacy platforms that we were using on premise. So that was the next big one. We really kicked off our digital transformation there, with the aim to having a single view of a customer really. And I'm sure everyone's probably in the same boat. That you need a single view of the customer to be able to react and give the customer what they want and what they need. So that was our strategy, and pleased to say that we're probably ahead of most of the other codes in that. And we've got all of our data now sitting in that single Salesforce environment. So I could look at a player from under 8s and watch him go all the way through to a senior career, potentially a pathway, or even a coach or a referee or a volunteer who are the lifeblood of our game as well. So that was a key project for us. And then the next big one really was around analytics, which we're going to talk to a bit more today, and really starting at the high level. So starting at the elite level of the game, as you saw in the video, focusing on the Wallabies and the Sevens and the Wallaroos, the national platform that we have we've got a bit more control over, and then filtering that down through Super Rugby and through to NRC, and then even lower than that, so schools and things like that. So that's kind of our key focus at the moment.
Terrific. And I'll add to that. So I remember the very first meeting we had about nearly 2 years ago. There was we had Michael Checker in the room, we had analysts in the room, and really there was a burning platform even at that stage where there was so much data, but it was all over the place in rugby. And we'll talk about the hygiene factor. The hygiene factor with the analytics was, let's get this into a single platform. And so over the last 12 months, Accenture has helped rugby build that by centralizing into a single analytics platform, big data, which is now hosted on Amazon, and it's going really well. I mean, right now, some of the stats, we've got over 18,000 players on there, over 700 different teams from around the world, not just Australia, with over 12,000 matches in there from the last decade and a half, actually. So huge amount of repository of data, which has been really well received. Kevin, do you want to talk about how coaches and staff are making use of this information now? Yeah,
for sure. So I think that's probably another one that I'd add to Bronwyn's deck would be underpinning the transformation with data and then reacting off of that. I mean, that's something definitely we've seen in the project that we're undertaking. We're very lucky with Czech. He's probably a bit of a innovator at heart, and he's always pushing us to try for new things and look at the latest things out there. So to have his backing was great, and have his full support was really good. So he was keen to see whatever we could do, and we understood that there was this hygiene piece, as you mentioned, that kind of brings all of our data together. And that was massive for us, because we've got some really high-skilled employees who are spending time formatting Excel spreadsheets and giving the data back to coaches when they ask for it, and merging all these different data sets, but they can't spend time doing where they can add the most value. So they're not being as efficient as possible, but they're also not being as effective as possible. They're not delivering the high-value stuff that they're employed to do. So some of this stuff that we do, it's not rocket science, I guess. It's just bringing all of our different data sources, whether that be GPS, Opta data, which is kind of how many tackles they make, how many passes, all that sort of stuff. They're overlaying that with some qualitative data. So we have analysts who say, was that a good tackle, bad tackle, that type of thing. And then merging in GPS. I mean, GPS for us is a key indicator of load. So that all goes into how hard we can train our players and really training them to the peak of what they can do to give them the biggest growth, but without putting them at risk of injury. Obviously, more injuries correlate directly to the amount of wins. So, that was a big thing for us.
Yeah, and I remember specifically one of the analysts said to me that it took them 6 hours to compile the data after a game for the post-match review. We've virtually eliminated that 6 hours turnaround time, and allows the analysts now, they are creating dashboards and insights far more beyond than they ever could. The other thing is taking the people on a journey has been really important, and Accenture has worked very closely with rugby to make sure we work at all levels with Rugby Australia and even the Super Rugby clubs. And I remember that we had a high performance conference last year, and this was a really important turning point where we presented all this back to the Super Rugby clubs. And the idea was, can we do something with this beyond the Wallabies? Can we roll this down lower levels? And that was I reckon it was a real tipping point, because that was the point where Super Rugby could have said, no, our data is our data, we don't want to share. But instead, it was so open and transparent that they go, let's take this to the next level. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, sure. So that kind of goes back to the spark the change that Bronwyn was speaking about. For us, sparking the change was, we'd had our worst year in professional rugby against New Zealand teams especially. We didn't win a game. The players were just not fit enough. They turned up into camp come the international season, and Czech and the strength and conditioning guys basically lost their head and read the right act to the Super Rugby teams, which you wouldn't want to be on the end of, trust me. And just kind of let them know that, you can't give us these guys in this condition and expect them to play test match footy, because they're not going to win. So that kind of sparked the change for us. It was really around driving the guys to see where they were in comparison to everyone else. So now, as Nikita said, it actually transformed our business in itself just by creating that openness and getting people to collaborate and work together to all work to a common goal, I guess. So yeah, now all data is open. They share between each other. So if I was the Reds and I was playing the Waratahs on Saturday night, I could see, how hard's Izzy training in the week leading up. Everyone's got their own methods and everything else, but it really helps us bond together. And when we're playing an opposition team, we can see how did the Waratahs go, and then the coaches can communicate and collaborate about what worked for you guys, what don't you think worked, and things like that. So yeah, it's a really exciting change, and as I say, it's actually been more of we've just enabled with the data piece, we've just enabled something that the guys wanted to do anyway, and there was a big drive, and we had that spark, I guess, to make that change.
Yeah, exactly. And this year, I think we won 3 games against New Zealand teams, or I think it was even more. Yeah. And the point difference between Australian and New Zealand teams and Australian and South African teams is reducing. So obviously our players are getting better, and I think the coaches and staff are much more informed. We inform them about how many tries do they need to get to win a Super Rugby game, how many are they allowed to concede before they are at jeopardy of losing a match. So these insights are really making a big impact. So that's terrific. Talk to me a little bit about what we've got planned next. What's coming up over the horizon for us?
Yeah, sure. So in the data project that we're looking at specifically, we're looking at a lot of machine learning stuff. So now we've kind of done our groundwork, I guess. We can now start looking at the machine learning algorithms and run that over video. Is something we're really, really keen to do. So we can feed all of New Zealand's games through our machine learning algorithms. We can spot where the gaps are between the players, because obviously we only get our own GPS from our players, so we know exactly where our players are, but we need the video to say where their players are. So if we can identify a space maybe between 10 and 12, they've got a wide defensive gap, we can target our defence there and things like that. So video analytics is a big one. The predictive stuff around injury and stuff like that, we do a lot in that space. And it's a really tricky one, injury prediction. Some people spend their whole careers just on injury prediction alone. So we've got some work that we can do there, and we've got some, a good cross team with obviously the Accenture guys. We're working with UTS, who we partner with quite regularly as well, and AWS to utilise all their different experiences, pull them all together, and then really leverage that benefit.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We obviously partner with Rugby Australia, but what we're finding is that as our different phases go along, that we're building this partner ecosystem that's beyond just our partnership, that we're bringing in those partners, like you said, AWS and UTS, but your other partners like Opta, Huddle, Sports Code, Smarterbase. So that's really going well. You can see examples of some of the stuff we did in phase 1. So on the green and the dark background is actually a mobile app that players and staff get access to from the Wallabies point of view, and we're rolling that out to different levels. And right-hand side is an example of I think that's a Super Rugby dashboard that all the coaches get around tackles and quality of tackles as well. So this is some of the stuff we've done, just collecting the data, presenting it back in a nice and meaningful point of view. On your point around the video analytics as well, what we're finding is we've got great data, but it's still on the ball data. And so being able to understand what happens after a player passes the ball, understanding how we can take it to the next level, those channels, is going to make this analytics even more valuable. Other things that we're talking about at the moment is synchronizing all this data together. So maybe for fans one day we'll have a video with live streaming stats next to it. Do you want to talk a little bit about what we're doing with that at the moment?
Yeah, sure. So As I say, high performance is kind of one piece. It's one piece of the puzzle, but then obviously we've got a much larger community out there as well. So we're going through a project at the moment. It's called Rugby Explorer. If you don't have it, download it off the App Store. Little plug. There you go. But so that's kind of, it's one part of a bigger project. So that one project actually encompasses five things. So that's competition management registration. At the moment, we find that not just us, there's no sport in Australia that makes the registration experience really easy and really seamless. And kind of a likeness to that was Qantas. I gave this example to some of the states the other week. It was Qantas. Once you're logged into a Qantas app, checking in's easy. You just press the button and you're in. That's what registration should be. But no one seemed to have grasped that in sport, and that's what we're trying to do. So competition management registration. The other one is streaming, so OTT. We obviously, a lot of our rights are with Foxtel, which is great. They're a great partner, but we also need to be able to get our voice out there. So it's about being able to broadcast our channels, which we can. So some of the NRC, some of the Aon 7s, even lower levels than that. The vision is, you come home, you've been at work all day, your kids played under 15s for school, and you can come home and watch their game at night. So giving the power for the clubs to be able to upload their own footage, and then you go to this central place to be able to watch it. So that's another aspect of it. The other kind of plays are voice. Obviously, voice, as Bron talked about again. It's massive acceleration in voice pickup. I saw some stats around where it was compared to search, and it's exponentially bigger than search and it's had a bigger pickup rate. So we want to be at the front of that. So voice is a big one for us. And then just giving back what we can around stats and information. And there's some good tools already coming out now around overlays on the video, so you can go to where the tries are. You can overlay with speeds they're running and things like that, but all done in real time. So as your ingest comes in, all the kind of stats are blended with the video, and then it's burnt in on the way through. So yeah, some really cool stuff that we're looking at, and yeah, we're in that second phase now, luckily, and we get to do some of the cool stuff, I guess.
Terrific. One last thing I will say is, I always get this question at these places, is how does this compare to Moneyball? First question I will say is, I'm not Brad Pitt. Kevin probably is closer to Brad Pitt than I am. Look, I think Australian sports are much further ahead than people give credit to. Rugby, for example, Oakland A's, which is what Moneyball was based on, was looking at their top tier team and their reserve grade team, where rugby is doing this at all levels. So we talked about the Wallabies, great, but the Wallaroos have access to this, the men's and women's sevens side have got access to this, Super Rugby clubs, NRCs, and we're even rolling this down to the under-20s as well.
Under-20s are there, yeah.
So this is actually more than just the top tier. This is about setting rugby up for success at all levels for the future. So that's the first thing. The other thing I will say is, this is not about replacing people. Kevin, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I don't believe a single person has been sacked from Rugby Australia because we've done this analytics project.
No, we've hired more people
exactly
to drive the value, right?
We drive the value. We've got a new analytics department at Rugby Australia that are driving this. And I think it's about supporting decision-making and giving the right information to those people.
Yeah.
So that's terrific. Just to close off, we've got two great matches coming up, the Wallaroos and the Wallabies.
Yep.
What's your prediction?
Oh, throwing me under the bus there, Nikita. I mean, I think the great thing about the weekend is the Wallaroos being able to play on the same stage as the men. I think that's great. I think they're going to have a tough ride, just given the dominance of the Black Ferns over the last 10 years. I'd love them to win. Whether they will or not, I don't know. But I do back the Wallabies. I think we've come a long way over this year. You can see some of the changes on the pitch. Our skills are getting better. We're focusing in the right areas. I think we'll turn over the All Blacks and we'll get a win on Saturday. And we need to. If we don't get a win here, then
it's hard. Isn't it?
It's a hard Bledisloe Cup. Yeah.
It is, because you've got the second one in New Zealand and then the third match is in Japan, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So Japan's the third match, obviously leading into the World Cup next year. Part of a bit of a broader strategy to engage the fans of Japan and things like that leading into the World Cup. So Accenture, not only do we partner with Rugby Australia, we're
proud sponsors of the Wallaroos and women's
Yep.
rugby. And that happened after the last Women's World Cup. I don't think the Wallaroos have actually played much since then. I think you're going to see a huge improvement in the Wallaroos. They've got access to this system. They've got access to great equipment and great coaching staff. So I predict that it's going to be Australia both games. But it'll be close. I reckon by 2. It'll be really close for it.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you guys for your presentations. Very helpful stuff. And I believe, Accenture, you guys have a booth at the exhibition hall. So any follow-up questions, any information you guys want to get, swing by.
We'll be at the booth. Exactly right.
And again, thank you guys, and thank you guys for
Thanks, guys.